Well, hello, my name is Sean Smith. I'm here at the University of Kansas, and I'm going to speak to you briefly for 15 minutes. And let's get our timer started here for 15 minutes. We got it all started about that really interaction with our home environment. And many of us are already doing this, we're doing it well. But I wanted to offer maybe a few additional tips and ideas, and we'll get started. All right, so agenda wise, tips, ideas, strategies, what we know, what we need to know, connections along those lines. And by the way, schoolvirtually.org at the very bottom. It's going to be at the bottom of every single slide here. And the purpose of it is simply there's a website there to offer lots of tips and tools for educators and parents. So let's get started. The first thing I want to reinforce in this new reality, it's actually an old reality. What, Sean? Well, the pandemic is, of course, now, but we've been doing online learning for years. And one of the key elements of successful online learning, particularly for students at the elementary school age and the lower middle. Now, for students with disabilities, ramp it up even higher in terms of grade level. A learning coach is critical. If you look at success and key ingredients, top 5 key ingredients to online learning for students, particularly students with disabilities in K-12, it's the involvement of the parent. Not surprising, but critical when it comes to the online home distance experience. Let's call them a learning coach. It could be grandma, grandpa, could be aunt, uncle, could be mom, dad, could even be an adult college student in the home, or a guardian in the home. All right, so with that said, let's go on here. So the Learning Coach 101, I want to offer some things that we've learned over the years. And by the way, this is based on some good research as well. So it's just not simply thoughts and ideas. There's some good data behind this. So first of all, the Learning Coach, what they do is they support the student. They're responsible oftentimes for that student work to be completed. Now, that's a whole nother aspect there. Wait, what about that independence? What about that setting priorities, being on task, distraction-free? Ooh, executive function components, challenges for our learners with disabilities. And therefore, oftentimes we need to look to the parent, to the adult, to the coach to be able to facilitate it. And by the way, another critical component for that learning coach is communication between home and school. You know, oftentimes when they're interviewed, learning coaches will report that, I'm a para, I'm a teacher, I'm a tutor. The big thing is that they're the ones there to make certain that the child understands what's due, helps them complete what's due, and everything in between. So with that in mind, let's think about the learning coach when it comes to that empowerment, that school and home interaction, home and school interaction. Because that coach can help everything from explain things that we would normally explain face-to-face, provide that additional assistance, model, be the eyes and ears for us from the school environment to the home, of course, because we're not there as educators, and a host of other things, okay? So with that in mind, let's do some tips and strategies. So number one, first of all, we need to, and this is old school, I know, in terms of, well, Sean, we've been doing this now for weeks. Of course we know there's a dedicated learning space. And yet I'm still finding when we talk to parents at home that, well, that home is built for relaxation. That home is built for comfort. That home is built for fun, not for learning. And so really we need to assist them in creating that distraction-free environment, and so that the child is in an environment that is not going to get in the way of some of the limitations they already have. So of course, number one. Now with that, oh, and by the way, this is an image out of HDTV in terms of a home living space. Yeah, right. We're talking about a clean table, not the colors and all that type of stuff. But it's really, really critical, all right? Oh, and by the way, well, we'll get to that here in just a moment. The other thing is that that parent is a behavioral consultant. They really are. I think of a parent I was talking to with a child with autism and how critical it was for her to truly understand elements of, first of all, how to make sure that her child with autism, who normally ran around with underwear on at home, but he's a 7 or 8-year-old nonverbal individual. But when he goes to school, he has clothes on. He had learned to do that. Now, wait, so there's a behavioral component that now we need to interject at home. And why putting clothes on? Well, that was critical to be able to see this is a learning experience. So some of the behavioral components that we maybe not have asked for in the home environment, we need to now ask for because, of course, it's a school environment as well. And so we can also, though, be the parent, that is, they can be the eyes and ears. They can observe, they can tally, they can code, they can collect, they can offer elements. And then, of course, we can then help design solutions. We, the educator, we can help implement solutions. We, the educator, with the assistance of the learning coach. We need to be an organizer. And now I keep using the pronoun. The coach needs to be the organizer. I think of an environment that I saw fairly early on in some of my work, nearly 10 years ago, And I was at a home of an online student. This student actually had Down syndrome, and she was 6th grade. And mom actually turned the kitchen from a kitchen into a classroom back to a kitchen. So when it came time for studying, everything on the kitchen table was taken off. It was stored into cabinets that were closed, and then another set of cabinets were opened, and inside those cabinets on the doors were the schedule. And then also, so when they opened up the doors, on each side was the schedule for the day. The computer was brought out, that was on a shelf. Papers, markers, pens, all that type of stuff was there in the cabinet, brought out, taken over the desk, the table. They learned, and when it time for lunch, packed it all back up, nice and neat, put it back into the cabinet. The cabinet was closed, the other cabinet was open, and lunchtime took place. So it went from a class to a kitchen back to a class, or vice versa. The organization was critical. And by the way, visual schedules, a number of other things, prompts, supports, all sorts of different things that we need to do to organize our student and to help the parent organize our student. The parent needs to understand, or the coach needs to understand, that they're the director of engagement. And for those of us that remember the Love Boat, great. If you don't worry about it. But the idea is that we're motivating our child. We're looking to engage the child in terms of the parent. The parent or the learning coach is being asked to keep them on task. They're asked to support and connect. They're asked to help develop the grit in the child. So we as educators need to support the parent to be able to do that. That may be that we model elements that will allow the child to stay on task. We give them ideas to be able to develop levels of persistence and everything in between. So those are things that we do as educators to help the parents to then help the child. The learning coach is also the instructor. The learning coach needs to know to break up times for stretching. I was talking to a parent the other day. They live in Florida. They have a pool in the backyard, and he says, I'm a PE teacher an hour a day. And he does it very purposely to get them tired out and to get them ready to focus. There's a lot of energy in that family, and so they do it very purposely at a given time of the day so that then they're ready to, and he says, I think they follow with a good 90 minutes to 2 hour stretch after that, and then that leads to lunch, and then there's another component. But that physical activity is really, really important for lots of different things, particularly our learners that need to focus and the like. Oftentimes, as I mentioned, parents, learning coaches see themselves as paraeducators. And in so doing, we need to think about how we can engage, we being the educator, to engage the adult in the home, the learning coach in the home, as that aid, as the person that could give guidance, as the person that can assemble some of the materials that we provide, as a person that can often offer the video, I'm tripping over that language, as a person that can offer the audio prompts. And let me give you an example. I'm thinking of another parent of a child with autism that I was talking to not too long ago, and again, nonverbal, elementary age. And there were certain verbal prompts that the school had used, related service provider, the educators, even the testers. That language was not something that the parent was aware of. And so as the parent was trying to implement the schedule and lessons on, I think it was mathematics, they weren't getting it. The child was just not connecting. The child was being stubborn. The child was behaving. Well, the video conference was used one day where the educator watched the parent and the child and realized, the parent's not using the language we normally use. So like any paraeducator, the educator educated the adult, the learning coach, in what they needed to do to facilitate implementation, just like a paraeducator would do in the classroom. They would need to know what to do to facilitate it. Well, the adult in the house, the learning coach, became that. And once that language was introduced, the verbal prompting with that vocabulary, night and day, things that were already set that weren't working, bingo, it all turned out. It's like the light bulb being turned on. So we need to think about that as educators to be able to empower those adults in the home to be at the level of paraeducator to support the implementation of our design and ideas, to be able to put together our ideas, things of that nature. But we're also potential at times, depending upon the capacity of the coach, we're the tutor. And when I talk about that is everything from pre-teaching to reviewing materials that they're going to need to have, to getting them ready, to empowering them with strategies. So it might be some strategies to deal with the lack of executive functions. It might be some strategies that we've been building up during the face-to-face environment that we're trying to have them use for reading fluency or for comprehension comprehension breakdown, or for getting ready for a writing assignment, or behavioral strategies that we're asking them to implement. And so that's where the tutor needs to, yes, it could be a tutor, it could be a paraeducator in this respect, but to me the tutor is going to be engaging them, empowering them, making them learn that level of the strategy or whatever it may be. And so they're also assisting the child in work completion. But more than that, to me, it's just not simply we get it done, but empowering them in the process. All those components require us to be able to support that learning coach to serve as the tutor. Now, finally, potentially as a teacher, and it might be the fact that we as educators are role modeling, are self-modeling, are informing the parent, might be on a weekly basis. It might be what we use for video conferencing once a week, and we're developing the skill in the respect of the parent to serve as a teacher, to be the one introducing some of that curriculum, to be the one reinforcing some of that curriculum that the online component just doesn't allow for. And that teacher, that online teacher, can't be everywhere at all times. And so the parent's going to have to step in if at all possible. So those are some things from the kind of the roles of the learning coach, but peppered in there, what we need to do as educators to further instill that strength and that ability within the learning coach at the home, of the adult in the home. So with that, how do we do it? Well, here are a few ideas. First of all, we do check-ins. We have regular check-ins. And check-ins can, by the way, be using our learning management system or Google Forms or stuff like that, where, hey, how's the child feeling today? And these can be geared towards the child, but equally important, geared towards the parent. And that is, hey, so what was a positive day, successful day? Was it potentially bad sleeping last night? Some issues going on at home? What's going on? So we can do a check-in. And we systemize that check-in as educators. And those check-ins could be done off a Google Form, learning management system. And by the way, the check-in could be also visual. Google Forms, for example, allows for this. It doesn't necessarily just have to be text. It could be, well, a series of pictures. How's the child feeling today? How's the child looking? What do we need to plan for going forward? But of course, we can use things like Remind and things like Remind and Class Tag. And for those that are unfamiliar with Remind, it goes through your messages. It allows for quick updates. It offers a reminder. It basically is communicating to the adult in the home what's necessary and then what they need to facilitate going forward. But the other thing we can do is we can host virtual office hours. And I think this is a great way to facilitate that development of the learning coach, where we're available. And yes, we can be available to the child, but to me, available to the parent, the grandma, grandpa. And this is not necessarily during the instructional day, evenings, weekends. And we can record our interactions there, but particularly it could be, I want to self-model what I mean by pre-teaching. Normally when we do this face-to-face, this is what it looks like, and this is where the challenge is. So let's walk you through how you'd introduce this in addition to the material the student has asynchronously. Or this is a video I created for the child, and this is how I recommend you using this, or offer supports. Or, oh, let's problem solve that. This is what you're seeing. Well, this is what we've seen at school as well, and this is what we'd recommend in terms of problem solving. So, and the list goes on and on and on, but the virtual office hours, where it could be over phone, but I'd highly recommend video conferencing if at all possible, because it just enhances that communication. That all helps facilitate that understanding. So if we can't do video conferencing, don't have the capacity, let's create some videos. So me as a teacher, I'm going to create a lesson overview. I'm going to be very explicit, and part of my lesson overview is definitely for the child, but you know what? Depending upon the age or the ability of the child, I very well may be creating these for the parent at home, the adult at home. So I'm going to be explicit. I'm going to give examples. I'm going to self-model. And then, of course, the parent, the adult can watch as many times as they'd like to make certain that they understand. I might highlight information that's critical. I might take the Word document and screencast that and break that down for them. Or I might do that via Google Doc. I may try to address potential barriers so they understand where there might be some challenges based on the curriculum or the design of things. And of course, I'm going to model what's necessary. And I'm going to do that regularly. I'm going to post that up. I'm going to put that in Google. I'm going to put the Google Drive, my learning management system, my content management system. The list goes on. Now, I can also then equip parents to be able to record their own video. I'm having some trouble at home. I'm seeing Sean do the following. Well, can you capture a video of that, and let's put that in a safe space that you and I can look at that together so I better understand what's happening. The parent may give a video update versus an email, or have it wait for a phone call. And again, they could illustrate what they're talking about so that the teacher better understands what to plan or redesign around. So parents can communicate as well. Now finally, as we get into our individual session here, I want to reinforce schoolvirtually.org has been at the bottom. Here's a screenshot of a portion of that website. It offers information for teachers, but also for parents. And I want to make you aware that that exists. And again, schoolvirtually.org, but also there's my email address. Feel free to email me. And hopefully we've given enough information to get us thinking about that school home empowerment. Touched upon a lot of different ideas, tip of the iceberg, maybe over the next 30 minutes now we can get into some specific things to be of assistance. And I'm going to turn off my timer because we're almost exactly at 15 minutes. I hope this has been helpful. I'm looking forward to interacting with you folks virtually here next.